Hello everyone, Livid here with another nightmare viable build video for Remnant from the Ashes. I wanted to do something a little different, so today we have an elemental shock build called Tempest's Fury, so let's jump right into it. This build excels at both range and managing hordes of enemies when funneled through choke points. It has the ability to not only stagger enemies and bosses, but also trap roaming style bosses into a state of constant damage. Your mods charge incredibly fast as these are base abilities on weapons used. And overall, this build is very defensive in nature. Where it struggles is boss damage can often not be as high as a dedicated crit build, and hordes of enemies in open spaces can be troublesome to deal with at times. We are going to start off with the Curse of the Jungle God in our handgun slot. As with every weapon in this build, shock damage will be a primary factor. This is a neat weapon, and not only does it excel at close range with a pretty rapid rate of fire, but it also has a 10% critical hit chance as a base stat on the gun. In the instance that your enemies are a bit farther out, this pistol even has a 2x scope. It's just a good gun to use at most ranges whenever you need it. Now the built-in mod for this weapon is Tentacle Shot. It allows you to arc a projectile that spawns a melee shock tentacle, dealing melee damage as well as 180 shock damage per hit. You can have up to 4 of these out at any given time, and the really neat thing about these are that they take advantage of all melee and elemental buffs from rings, amulets, and even traits, quickly turning them into rather high damage dealing tools. The only downside to them is that they can only attack what is around their spawn position, so you will need to get enemies in close to make use of them. For the long gun slot, we're going to use another shock based weapon, the Eye of the Storm. This weapon has a solid rate of fire for the range you get out of it, as well as a pretty solid damage stat when fully upgraded. The mod that is housed within this weapon is the Static Field Shot. You can have up to 5 of these in reserve, and when you activate any one of them, it fires a projectile dealing 120 shock damage and overloading the enemy it hits. When overload is triggered on any enemy, it will explode, dealing 200 shock damage in a 4.5 meter blast radius, great for ad control. The key to overload is that once you have procced the stat using the mod on an enemy, switch back to the normal fire mode of your weapon and simply hit it once. This will immediately trigger the explosion. Similarly, the tentacles or even the normal shots from your pistol will also trigger any enemy that is overloaded. For our melee weapon, we use Voice of the Tempest, another melee weapon I almost never take off due to the overload proc being exceptional at dealing with enemies who group up close to you. This weapon further excels in this build due to so many parts of it playing well with its overload mechanic and shock damage. For our armor set, we are actually going to start going down the road of mixed armor piece builds. We are going to go with 1-piece Radiant, specifically the head due to it being the lowest weight of the 3, and 2-piece Scrapper for the chest and boots. When mixed together, we will get a 0.75% boost to our crit chance and damage from the Radiant piece, while also getting a 15% damage bonus to everything within 5 meters from us, further playing off the tentacle spawns. Also, mixing these two sets in this manner will give us a medium armor rating, letting us take a little less damage and keep our mobility at a manageable state. Now, for our necklace, the Storm Amulet is really the only choice here. It gives you a 20% boost to all elemental damage, which literally applies to every single mod and weapon we have equipped on this build. The Devouring Loop would be my first ring choice here, allowing all your weapons and tentacles to have a chance to deal an insane burst of damage, considering their already stacking damage bonus. Couple this with your second ring slot, the Stone of Balance, which further adds another 10% to all ranged and melee damage, and you can quickly see where we are going with this. Now, shown here are all the traits I find invaluable for this build, and frankly, the higher up you get in trait level, everything really just becomes useful. The key ones, however, are Kingslayer, Mind's Eye, Executioner, Exploiter, Rapid Strike, and Warrior. All the stamina, health, and regen traits are always beneficial, especially for higher difficulties, but these ones that I mentioned specifically will be needed to make the damage shown in this build shine. The footage following this build explanation will show you a couple of scenarios. I'll quickly be showing you how the overload mechanic works and can be procced with all your options available to you. Then you'll see gameplay of the Undying King, some general world combat, and finally a horde situation in the Shrine of Immortals, even though the enemies kind of bugged out a few times during it. I hope this guide is a bit of fresh take on builds, and it was really fun to put together, and once I got used to the playstyle of this build, it just felt super fun to use. So with that, sit back and just enjoy some commentary-free gameplay.
Who's next? 10